the thing that I want everyone to know from this podcast today, anyone can go to Carnival. Anyone can be in Carnival. You don't even have to be a dancer. The way it works is there's different schools in Rio. For example, this year, myself and my friend Jackie, who I dance with, we were fire. So those instructions go to the atelier, who's agreed to work for us, and he creates sketches, talks ideas, there's a bit of back and forward. And some of the places that we would go to do classes and train in are in the favelas. That's not really a place where as a tourist you would usually go in Brazil.
My friend Queen Alexandra, a dancer, a physiotherapist, and a deep soul with a truly beautiful perspective on life. Get ready for a conversation that moves your body and mind.
Being passionate about women's rights happened as I was going through my teen years and then into adulthood because I started seeing inequality. You know, a child who is really hypermobile and has low tone, and you might be trying to do all these core strength exercises, which is boring as hell and no one likes doing. But then you might have their mum say, oh man, because, you know, this kid's core strength is so much better, like he sat down and tried to play the piano and it made him so happy.
Alex, thank you so much for making time to catch up and chat. I appreciate it. I enjoyed your journey, your travel journey on Instagram to get to Rio, but also your performance at Carnival. And I'm very, very keen to understand what is that like?
Yeah.
And how does one get to perform?
Yeah, so it is a pretty crazy journey. I do appreciate that. I think I didn't realize quite how much until I was trying to post the journey on Instagram, and so many people, you know, message me, even people I haven't spoken to since primary school, people I haven't seen in years and years and years, messaging being like, this is crazy, this is so cool. But I think I've been in the dance world for such a long time now that to me it's sort of, you know, business as usual. Like I do still, of course, appreciate Carnival, that it's a crazy, glitzy, glamorous experience. But it's also when I'm there, I'm thinking about, right, where do I need to be? What do I need to be doing? Is my costume right? Am my shoes right? Is my makeup okay? You know, am I going to get there in time? Listening to instructions, which are usually not in English as well. So yeah, it was a pretty cool experience and cool journey. I think the thing that I want everyone to know from talking, you know, from this podcast today, anyone can go to Carnival. Anyone can be in Carnival. You don't even have to be a dancer. You can just be in Carnival. So the way it works is there's different schools in Rio, so different Samba schools. And every year at Carnival, they're competing against each other. So there's like a rank of schools and someone wins. And each year they're competing to climb up the ladder and you know, get the glory and the honor for their school. So as someone who's a foreigner, basically you need to be affiliated with one of the schools in Rio. So you need some kind of contacts. But there are a few people in Australia. The lady I went with, Talita, lives in Adelaide. She grew up in Rio and she's a Samba dancer herself. And she takes groups of Australians across every year. So I already knew her and knew who she was through the dancing I'd done in Australia. And then the first time I went to Carnival, which was 2024, decided to go with her. So she does all of the organizing and logistics. So she said, okay, these are the schools that are parading. These are the options that you have. And then there's different, within the school, there's different ranks, I guess. It's probably not the best word. There's different levels of how you can participate, all the way from being a soloist, which is what I did last year and this year, to being in a group of dancers where you're all kind of dressed in matching costumes dancing together, to being what they call the general aisle or general ala, which is where anyone can be in Carnival. So you go, you get given some crazy elaborate costume and you go. So in 2024, the first year I went, my parents decided they wanted to come and watch me dance. And I spoke to Talita and she said, well, great, they want to watch you dance, but, they're coming all the way to Rio. Why don't they be in it? So I could convince them. Dad's super on board. Mum, not so sure about it. There was a bit of peer pressure. We got her there too. And so Mum and Dad were also in Carnival.
That's fantastic.
Yeah. So they also, got the experience of what it's like to actually be in it. So you don't necessarily have to be a dancer. So with these schools, there's thousands of people in each school, and there's a clock that starts, and you've got a certain amount of time to get the start of your parade across the finish line and the back of your parade across, the end. So yeah, you are in with thousands of other people, and there's different sections which are called alas, and there's floats in between each section, and then you've got your drumming group as well, and then you've got your solo dancers, which are often in between, kind of leading different sections of the parade. So there's an option for everyone. You can even be on a float as well. So these big, these massive floats that they build, you can also be in costume on one of those, dancing or not dancing, just singing along. So yeah, I think going to Carnival, it seems like, it's this thing you can only do if you've been dancing forever and you do Samba and, you're this and you're that. And it's just so not true. You can just go to Carnival and just be in Carnival. You could do it.
That's fantastic.
Yeah.
That's fantastic. I could picture myself on a float.
Yeah.
With a camera.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Because I've never done a float. I would love to do that. Hopefully one day I'll get to do a float.
I've been making plans.
No, I'm running out of money. I've got to stay in Australia this year.
Tell me about the cost of getting there. Tell me about the cost of costumes and how does that work?
Yeah, it's quite varied. It is a lot depending on what you're doing. So obviously you've got your flights, which are, expensive from here to South America. Then you've got to pay for your position, whatever that is. So for example, being a soloist, which are called muses, that is a more expensive position than being a passista, which is kind of like a general dancer. Again, is different to being in the general aisle where you're not necessarily expected to dance. You kind of just bop along. So it depends on that. It depends on the school and what they're asking for. It depends if you've got someone good negotiating for you. For positions where you're wearing the same costume as everyone else, so like if you're in the general aisle or a passista aisle, your costume's usually included in that as well because the school is making it for you. They're not built to last. You get to the end of the parade and you kind of go around the corner and there's this massive pile of just costumes, people just taking off their costumes and just dumping them in the pile. And I think a lot of schools try to repurpose things. So they'll take things and try and take out the frames, the wires, maybe reuse some of the materials. I think sadly a lot probably gets thrown out, which is sad. But with some of those costumes, by the time you get to the end, they're like falling apart anyway. That's very different to in the musa soloist position. They're well-made costumes, and so there's then a negotiation where you have to find an atelier, so that's a costume maker, and he receives sketches and instructions from the school. They say, for example, this year, myself and my friend Jackie, who I dance with, we were fire. So each school has a theme.
Literally fire.
Literally fire. So each school has a theme. Our school's theme this year was environmentalism, and we were the fire destroying everything. So our costumes, had to be fiery. So those instructions go to the atelier, who's agreed to work for us, and he creates sketches, talks ideas. There's a bit of back and forward with the help of Toledo, who speaks Portuguese, back and forward around what we're comfortable wearing, what we're not comfortable wearing. There's negotiation around types of feathers. Are they artificial feathers? Are they real? Are they rooster? Are they pheasant? Are they ostrich? Are the gems glass gems? Are they plastic gems? There's all sorts of back and forward around materials, because obviously the better quality the material, the more expensive it is. But the schools, it's a competition, so they want you to be as big and elaborate and well made as possible. So there's negotiation around what can we afford versus, what do they want, as in the best of everything. And then when we arrived to Rio, there's costume fittings. So we had to go to the atelier's house, which was actually a really cool experience in itself, because I, watch all these costume makers on Instagram and social media, and I am always looking at their costumes going, wow, that's beautiful. Wow, that's amazing. And the costume maker that we had this year is someone I've always admired his costumes. So to have him agree to make one for us was really incredible. So that was a cool experience, going to his house, seeing his workshop, seeing all the people working for him. And we did our costume fitting. They make any last minute adjustments, make sure everything's correct, make sure the shoes are correct. And then you don't really get your costume until maybe the day before. So there's not a lot of time to practice in it. You kind of get it and then off you go.
And somebody wanting to be a soloist, approximately, what are they looking at?
Oh, man. So Jackie and I both deliberately didn't add up the cost because we just didn't want to know. But yeah, you're looking, if you want to go to Carnival, be a soloist, get a good costume, thousands of dollars. Yeah.
5,000, 10,000, 20,000?
Well, I guess are we going to include flights?
Not including flights.
Not including flights.
We chose to live in Australia. It's far.
Oh, man. A few thousand.
Okay.
I would say a few thousand. Again, I don't completely want to know the answer to that, because then I have to
start budgeting.
Yeah, exactly.
Tell me about you and dance. How did you get started? What was your passion?
Yeah, I started when I was 4. I was pretty young. And my sister did ballet. My older sister did ballet. And I think I just wanted to start as well. My parents always said I never walked around the house. I ran, skipped, hopped, jumped, danced, but I never walked around the house, which now that I'm a physio, I have questions about my development. But I think we'll just say that it was just, I've always wanted to dance. I've always just loved dancing. So I did ballet for a long time, from when I was 4 until about maybe 18, 19. I did a few other styles, a bit of jazz and things like that as well. But ballet, classical ballet, is the thing that I did the entire way through. And I think I just always loved it. I think it suited my personality as well. It's really structured. There's a lot of routine to it. It's predictable. It's something to work on. You have goals, there's levels. So I think that drew me to it as well. I think in a way it's probably similar to martial arts, in that it teaches you a lot of discipline, and you've always got goals and things to progress to. So I started that when I was quite young. And then when I was in university, I sort of stopped for a while. I just didn't have time, I think, to do ballet, especially to do point work. you need to be doing it enough times a week that you're strong enough to do it and not going to hurt yourself. And going to uni, I just didn't have time to do that. And you can't do, well, I don't really think you can safely do one ballet class a week if you're in pointy shoes, because you just end up getting injured. So I stopped, and I think I was probably ready for a break as well. So I didn't really dance through university. I did, the occasional class here and there. I think I tried a few different random styles. And then when I'd finished university, I was sort of keen to get back into dancing properly again. And a friend of mine just said, oh, there's this deal at a dance school here in Canberra. It's a Latin dance school. Did you want to come with me and try? And I thought, yeah, why not? And started with like salsa, bachata, those types of Latin styles. Saw the Samba classes happening. And I just thought, oh man, that looks so fun. I was really drawn to the drumming too. It's like such a strong, kind of joyous beat. And I eventually started doing that. And there is actually some similarities between Samba and ballet. And so I think it felt, once I sort of learnt the basic steps, it felt relatively natural as well. And then I just sort of kept going. I just sort of kept going from there, doing more and more of it. Now I'm in a team, and we dance around Canberra. We've seen you at all sorts of events, but we also get hired for private events as well. So we do all sorts of things: Christmas parties, birthday parties, christenings, baptisms. I did a living wake last year. I did a basketball presentation last weekend, like all sorts of events around Canberra, charity events. We danced for the Raiders recently. So yeah, I think I love that it gives me the opportunity to go to some events in Canberra that I wouldn't otherwise even know of, let alone think to go to. I see so many different venues in Canberra. You meet so many different people. Samba's from the Brazilian culture, but we also end up at lots of events celebrating other cultures as well, which I love. Yeah, and it just really turned into a passion for me. And then I think, having done lots of Samba competitions in Australia, not that there's many, but having sort of done the ones that we had do, the next logical step was, okay, well, I need to learn more about this, especially I think if I'm out dancing, in a sense professionally, representing this culture and this style, then I feel like I need to go there and I need to learn from the best. I need to see what the culture is like for myself. And so I was on a girls' trip. We were at Jindabyne, and I said, guys, I think I'm just going to go to Carnival. Do you want to come? And they were like, yeah, sure. Why not? So we did. We went to Carnival, and it was amazing. It was an amazing experience. And to be able to do it with friends was incredible, and have my parents come along too. And then we finished that, and I looked at my friend Jackie. Her and I had done the soloist position. And I said, Jax, I feel like if we did it again, we could do a better job. And she said, yeah, I think so too. And I said, well, do we just do it next year? And she was like, yeah, let's just go. So we went this year as well. And now I need to buy a house, so I better stop.
Tell me about, what did you learn about the culture when you were there? Like, what did you get to experience about Rio, about the costume makers, about the teachers and schools?
Yeah, I mean, life is very different there. It's very colourful. I think, especially the first time I went, coming back to Australia and going to work, we all wear black and grey and beige and brown. Whereas there, they're just such a colourful culture. Everything is so vibrant. So I think that stuck with me. I love that there's a lot of, I think, self-expression. People are walking down the street. I mean, it's also Carnival, so there's kind of no rules, but you just wear whatever you feel like wearing, whatever colours you feel like wearing. and no one bats an eyelid. I think there's a bit of freedom in self-expression there that they have that maybe we don't. So that was really, great to experience. They have a lot of respect for their culture. Um, Again, I think probably more than you see in Australia. And I don't know if that's just because we're such a melting pot of different cultures, that there's so many different identities, whereas they, very much they are Brazilian and they're all quite united, I think, in that sense. So that was really beautiful because that comes through a lot in Samba, I think. Like a lot of the teachers that you're learning from over there, they're teaching you not just about the movements and the steps and dance technique and fitness and things, but they're teaching you about the culture. Samba is quite tied to religion in Brazil as well. So you're learning a lot. I've learned a lot about, Brazilian culture, and kind of the African roots of that culture because of Samba and how Samba started. And I probably never would have learned about that otherwise. I don't know that we're necessarily taught very well at school in Australia about different cultures, at least not when I went through. Hopefully it's a bit better now. So that was great. But then also you do see, the poverty over there is very different to what we have here. So that, especially the first time I went across, I at times found hard because, I remember sort of sitting on the bus on the way to Carnival. I've got my makeup done. I've got my expensive costume with its, feathers and glass beads. And I'm about to do this amazing, once in a lifetime sort of opportunity, and looking out the window and there's, people living on the street. I just remember seeing this man who was on the sidewalk, looked like he was very injured. Like, I think his ankle looked very broken. And he was just like, sitting on a piece of cardboard, and he didn't even, to be honest, necessarily look unhappy. He just sort of looked like he just lived there. He existed there. And that was his lot in life. And I think that was eye-opening because there's a lot of that. There's a lot of that there. And some of the places that we would go to do classes and train in are in the favelas. So that's not really a place where, as a tourist, you would usually go in Brazil. But we were sometimes venturing into these places. And so you'd see a lot more of Brazil than what you would as a tourist just seeing Copacabana Beach, which is obviously very touristy. So some of the poverty, the way of life there was, it's just not something that you'd see here. And it does make you grateful. Like, I think both trips that I've been over, I've loved being there, and I've been so glad that I've gotten to come back home too.
And has that changed how you look at life from having been there a couple of times, experienced the high of Carnival and what you wanted to do, but also seeing the real side of Brazil?
Yeah, I think it makes me feel very grateful. I think especially this last trip, because after we went to Rio, we went to Peru because I want to see Machu Picchu. And we were meant to go on this 5-day hike to Machu Picchu, and we started, and then we had to turn around and leave because there were landslides. So the wet season just hadn't ended. It was meant to have finished, but it just hadn't. So it was still raining. And as a result, the landscape was really unstable. So there were too many landslides. And so we ended up having to turn back and go back into town. We did still get to Machu Picchu by train, but then there was an earthquake and there was a landslide that covered the train track. So we weren't sure if we were going to get stuck in, this little town outside Machu Picchu, and the river was flooding, and it was just natural disaster galore. So I think the combination of that especially I remember saying to Jackie in the airport waiting, to come home, I said, I just can't wait for everyday life. Like I can't wait to just be at work and have someone ask me to do something that's annoying and just be like, oh, that's annoying. Just like the day to day, how lucky are we that we get to be safe enough that we can feel mildly annoyed by a small inconvenience, because people in Peru, in Brazil, they're stressed because they don't know if they're going to survive the day or live tomorrow or find a place to stay or get medical care if they need it, is very different to the problems we have here. And I think it definitely is, it changes your perspective around like, okay, well, that tiny little thing, is it actually annoying? Maybe I'm actually just lucky that I get to be annoyed by that. So that was eye-opening. But I just think travel is good for that. I just think travel gives you perspective. So, yeah, I think it is important, especially being from Australia where, we're all, compared to the rest of the world, relatively wealthy. I think it's important to educate ourselves where we can, because, you don't want to be walking around being like, oh, this is terrible, that's awful, that's so annoying, that's so bad. And, the reality is actually it's really quite great. It's good here.
What does the training routine and discipline for a professional dancer that performs look like?
Well, we all have day jobs as well. So we're working our 9 to 5, and then we train usually in the evenings and sometimes on the weekends. But the weekends is usually when we have shows and things like that. Um, I'm sort of considered semi-professional because while I do get paid and make money from dance, it's not my full-time job. As opposed to my teacher who is professional, it is her full-time job. So most of us in our performance team are semi-professional dancers, except for our teacher, because that's what she does full time. So yeah, we train all year round. It obviously, when we've got big events, things tend to amp up a bit, but we're always training a few times a week. Not necessarily just Samba. We all tend to do other Latin-based styles as well. I think that's important because I think doing other styles makes you a better dancer. I think having done ballet and learning, for me, Brazilian funk, I feel the past few years I've tried to learn some Brazilian funk, which felt so unnatural coming from a really upright ballet background. Brazilian funk is much more like hip hop and twerk. That felt so unnatural for me. But I think pushing myself, accepting I'm probably not going to look very good at this, no one will want to watch it, but it's making me be a better dancer. So I think that's really important, is just doing some of the other styles and cross training. For Samba, a lot of it is just fitness. Samba's really fast, so you need a lot of cardio. To parade in Carnival, you're dancing for up to an hour in full heavy costumes, high heel shoes. It's not like performing on a stage where, the curtain goes up, you've got 2 minutes and then the curtain goes down and you can be like, oh God, thank God that's over, I'm exhausted. You have to be on the whole time. There's constantly cameras and photographers. So, you want to be on show. So stamina and just cardio fitness is really important for Samba. So we do fitness training usually a few times a week, and then we do different styles as well. For me, for this year going to Carnival, there's a competition up in Queensland. It's called World Salsa Solo, and it's a Latin dance competition. That's in December, usually early December every year. So I sort of used that as part of my training to Carnival as well, because I competed there. So I had all of the extra, training and then extra rehearsals in the lead up to that. Then we had that in December, and then I left late Feb. to go to Carnival. So then from December to February, it was sort of then just focusing really solely on Samba from that point, and then just continuing to try and push the fitness. I think it's really, the more cardiovascularly fit you can be, the easier it is, because Carnival, firstly, you've got the jet lag that you're dealing with, the heat and humidity. So you're getting there in the middle of summer in a tropical country. So here in Canberra, we're not used to that, having to exercise in that heat and humidity. So that's tough on the body as well. And Carnival, it runs for 5 days at night time. So it's not during the day. You have to sleep during the day, and then you might be, I think this year I paraded at 2 a.m. I think the year before it was about 5:30 a.m. So you also have to push through the fatigue element, which I'm terrible at. I really like my sleep. So for me, I think that's the hardest thing, is just being jet lagged, sleep deprived. You don't know what time zone you're in, because you go from Australian time zone, then you get there, you're in trying to switch to Rio time zone, and then you're kind of switching back for Carnival, and then Carnival finishes, and then you've sort of got to switch back again. So I think the more fit you can be, the better. I know it's very boring, but we weren't drinking alcohol. We were trying to eat fairly well. We're trying to nap and get sleep when we can, and just try and look after our bodies, because, yeah, I feel like it's very easy to get sick
Or
if you're a bit
dehydrated.
run down.
Yeah.
Yeah. Let alone, then you've got different food and different water and things like that. So it's really easy, I think, as a foreigner to go over and just get sick. And a lot of people do. And we got sick as well, but thankfully we got sick after Carnival, not beforehand. That would have made it even tougher. So yeah, we do train all year round. We try to increase before competitions, events, and for me, the way things lined up with the competitions here in Australia kind of just helped me work towards Carnival. We were trying to do a bit of hiking as well, because we were then meant to be going to Peru to do hiking. So, I was just trying to hike up some of the mountains around Canberra for the cardio fitness, and also to break in the hiking boots.
The massive Mount Taylor.
Yeah, I know. It's like the guide in Peru laughed at me. He said, "So what's your biggest mountain?" I said, "Oh, it takes 30 minutes to get up." And he was like, "What is that? I don't think that's a mountain."
It's a big hill.
Yeah, he said, "Oh, that's a little hill."
How do you pick your perfect Samba outfit? Do you get a choice in it?
Yes. So when you get your first kind of proper couture Samba outfit with the feathers and the headpiece, it's a big deal. It's quite an honor to sort of get to that point where you're getting your own costume. We do choose our own, because it's an investment, really. You're buying your own costume, so you want to love it. It's hard. The girls and I are always laughing at ourselves and each other, because we're, I think, so desensitized now that we now get out our costumes and we're like, oh, this old thing again, whereas the reality is that they're stunningly beautiful. I think you want to have a color that you feel good in. So I think all my costumes are cooler tones, because I just don't. Unfortunately, I don't think I really suit the really warm, reds and oranges and things like that. So
Says fire at Carnival.
no, but I didn't get a choice in that. So I just had to suck it up and be like, it is what it is. I'll put on heaps of fake tan and it'll be fine. So yes, I do tend to wear the cooler colors. There's some different ateliers that will ship to Australia. So they're all made in Brazil. We're really lucky here in Canberra. We've got a costume maker who is a Canberran herself. I think she's probably our only one in Australia. So we're just really lucky that she's here. And we often will purchase these costumes from Brazil. They'll get shipped to us, and it's never a perfect fit. So she will alter, adjust, make them, suit our bodies. Sometimes if, like I've bought costumes before and I've not liked, maybe the top or the bottoms, or it hasn't fit quite right, then I'll take it to her, and she's fantastic at sort of remaking it. Sometimes she'll start with a completely new base and use all the gems and things off it and kind of remake it. So most of my costumes are actually like a mishmash of things that I've bought, things that have been repurposed, secondhand costumes that other people have worn, bits that I've made as well. I think all of us are like that. Every so often we do little crafternoons and we get some
Afternoon, love
yeah,
it.
we do a crafternoon. we like get a bottle of Prosecco and a hot glue gun, and we make whatever we need to make, or we're constantly doing costume repairs because they're really delicate, and then we're working so hard in them. You're exercising hard and dancing hard. So there's constantly, wherever I go, just a trail of like gems and feathers,
So we can find you.
glitter all the time. Even at work, even when I'm not dancing, there's always a gem stuck to my shoe or my hair or something like that. So yes, there's a lot of maintenance and upkeep and repair work to the costumes for sure. So I think, I don't know, it's just personal preference, really. What colors do you like? What makes you feel good? Some people feel really confident in like a two-piece bikini, walking around. Other people don't. Some people like a full kind of bodysuit leotard style. There's all sorts of different styles that you can have, and you will be able to find something that makes you feel good.
How did you find what makes you feel good, and how did you find confidence for both performing for private events and niche audiences or smaller audiences versus multicultural festival or carnival or something like that?
Yeah.
How did you find your confidence?
Oh gosh. I think when I'm dancing, I'm just happy to be dancing. I'm not, and I almost find it sometimes easier in front of bigger audiences, because when it's small, if it's a really small audience, you can see them watching you, and it's easier to be like, do they like it? Are they having a good time? What do they think? As opposed to a big audience where you're kind of, you don't see those individuals quite so much. So you're just kind of performing out to the crowd. So I actually almost find large audiences in a way are easier. I think having always danced, I've probably always just grown up learning those skills as well. And I think they're really great. And I see it in my young nieces who now dance, just the confidence that they've been able to build up by performing dance. It's not an easy thing to do, especially as a child, even as an adult, to stand up in front of people and dance or public speak or perform in some way. So I think you just learn that skill over time. I get confidence from being prepared as well. And that's where all of the training comes in. I think we're always slightly nervous because we want to do a good job. But if you feel like you've trained hard, you know the choreography well, you trust your team too. I think, because the girls and I are always dancing together, you do in a way get used to dancing together and what it feels like. And you do notice if you're dancing next to people you don't usually dance with, it is slightly harder than, kind of dancing with the people that you're always around. So I think because we have been dancing together for years now, we're fairly cohesive. We know how the other people in the team think and dance, and things don't always go according to plan as well. Sometimes the music might stop or they might play the wrong music. I've been to shows where they played Italian music for some reason. or they've played the music at like half speed or double speed or something random like that, or the music started halfway through the song. There's definitely been times where you just have to look at each other and just telepathically communicate and be like, let's do this. So we tend to have a lot of like, bits of choreography that we all know, um, so that if things like that happen, we can all go into it. So there's a lot of logistics involved, but I think just knowing the choreography and trusting the people that you're dancing with makes you feel so much more confident. Also, yeah, the costume too. I want to know that my costume fits. I want to know that when I jump, when I dance, nothing's going to fall off. That would be horrible. So I think, yeah, feeling comfortable in what you're wearing is definitely a big part of it as well.
I've had the privilege to photograph you, do little bits of video, watch you and your friends perform, know and admire your dance school. And I've always sat and wondered, these beautiful humans, how do they deal with judgments, someone passing a comment, which can happen to anyone,
Mm.
whether you're a dancer or not. But how do you deal with that? Do you process it? Do you ignore it? What do you do with it?
I mean, we get annoyed with it. I think luckily 90% of people are enjoying the colors and the music and the movement. I think Samba is, you know, it brings joy to people as well. And that's what we're trying to do, with our dancing is when we're performing where we love it and we want to share that with people. So we hope that people can see the joy it gives us and that it will give it to them as well. Dancing for kids is the best because kids don't judge. And they just think it's amazing. Occasionally you will get comments. We're a pretty close group, our dance studio really does try to promote, I guess, this sense that we're all in it together. We're all a big dance family. So we're pretty protective of each other as well. And we're a bit of a family. So I think, yeah, if anyone was making comments and things like that, we're pretty quick to probably just leave, walk away. And I guess over time, maybe you probably do develop more confidence as well. Whereas if people are saying things like that to me now, I don't think it bothers me in the way that it might have done, when I was younger. Now I just sort of think, I kind of think it's their problem, really, because I think, well, I'm dancing, I'm representing a culture, I'm trying to bring joy to people. These are all really positive things. Doing it is getting me involved in fitness. It's given me friends. It's given me family. It's all positive things. So if you're finding something negative with it, I mean, I think maybe you're the problem. But I think it is easier to think like that now. When I was younger, it probably did bother me more. And I probably didn't know how to handle it quite so much. Whereas now I probably just shrug it off. Sometimes with some of the younger girls, I do worry. I don't want it to affect them. But we're pretty good as a group at talking things through as well. If we've done a show and again, hardly ever happens, but if we've done a show and someone was making rude or inappropriate comments, we will debrief. After every show we do, we always we get changed and we debrief what went well, what could have gone better, what would we do next time. Because it's Canberra, we're often going back to the same venues. So sometimes it will be, okay, well, if we were at this venue next time, I think maybe we'd go out from that side. That made more sense. Maybe we would cut the music there. So there's just a general debrief that happens anyway. And if there's ever things like that, if anything negative has ever happened, then that would be a part of that too. So I think, like, we know we have each other's backs. There's it's not very often that, someone would be really sort of rude or inappropriate. Um, and if they are really bad, I've also seen other people step in, like not even us. I've seen other people, family members, friends of the dancers, sometimes even just random people. I think once there was one year at Floriade where we were trying to parade through and this random lady took it upon herself to just clear the way and be like, just everyone needs to move, the dancers are coming. So sometimes you do get other people as well who, will kind of, stick up for you and are really encouraging. And I would say that's the majority, definitely the majority. But I think we're confident in who we are and what we're doing and what it represents. And if you don't like that, don't watch. Um, but also, if you're seeing something negative in that, I don't think it's us.
Correct. And I think that's great framing, that sometimes people don't have the perspective to understand a culture that's in front of them,
Yeah.
or to appreciate a dance form or that person's discipline to be able to perform in front of them.
Yeah.
But what I love hearing is that for younger dancers, that there is a support structure.
Yeah.
They are not alone. They have got that support. They've got that experience, that it's there for them to lean on, which is an ideal segue for me to chat about women's rights, and find out why you are so passionate about it. But is there a defining moment that made you more passionate or committed to it?
I mean, I don't think there's been one. I think there's been many. I am lucky that I'm surrounded by really amazing women. So the girls I dance with are all beautiful, intelligent, talented, driven women. So for me, that's my normal, that I'm surrounded by, all these amazing girls. Um, I think probably being passionate about women's rights happened as I was going through my teen years and then into adulthood, because I started seeing inequality. I think as a child, I'm lucky to come from a really beautiful family, and my parents, have a very loving marriage and are respectful for each other. I've also got a big sister who's an absolute powerhouse. So that was my normal upbringing. Becoming a teenager, I think you start to become exposed to, the way that other people think as well. And then I did start to see and start to notice that, sometimes people would talk down to women just because they were a woman. Or, I've noticed in various other workplaces as well, disrespect towards women, to the point where, yeah, it was just downright assault, really, that, a man in a position of power was really taking advantage of sort of younger, more junior women who were really just scared to say anything because, they didn't want to lose their jobs. So I think seeing some of that and experiencing some of that and having to make decisions around, okay, well, I've seen this and I know it, and I'm a younger woman and this man is in a position of power. So that's scary for me to say something, but also what does it say about my morals and values if I don't say something and stick up for younger women? Kind of, a few situations like that made me consciously have to decide, well, I can't, I think if you say nothing, well, you can't expect the problem to change. And so I sort of have had to consciously be like, no, I do need to be vocal about this. I know so many women who have been negatively affected by men in the workplace, in personal relationships. I think, unfortunately, the small percent of people who do make judgment or negative comments about the dancing, it's mostly men. It's not other women, really. Very, very rarely. I think I can think of one time that it's maybe been a woman. I could easily, off the top of my head, think of several times that it's been men. So I think there is still, I know that we've come a long way, but I think there is still a long way to go. And I look at my nieces, I have two young nieces who also dance now. And I look at, all of the confidence and body positivity that they're learning through dance. Because the focus in dance is, and this is what I love about Samba as opposed to something like ballet, it's all about how well can you do it. It's not necessarily about, well, what does your body look like? It's about, are you working hard? Are you, pushing as hard as you can? Are you working on your fitness? Are you strong? So I see, my nieces being surrounded by this really positive culture of women. And then I'm scared of, them growing up and being, kind of realizing there's this other side to the world as well. And I think the only thing is that we need to call it out, get people to think about what they're doing. Because I think sometimes people aren't even necessarily meaning to view women as not equal. There's just so many things built into society that it's just normal. People are sort of like, oh, I would never do that. I would never judge. I would, never be controlling, because they're viewing it as just like they're thinking, oh, a man hitting a woman is bad, which it is. And they're thinking, I would never do that. And therefore I'm not doing anything wrong. And like, well, he might do it and that's not good, but that's not me. And I think all of us just need to kind of have conversations and, get each other thinking about it. And I think my parents just raised myself and my sister that if you wanted to do something, we'll just work hard and you can do it. And then I think then becoming a bit older and thinking, oh, okay, well, I want to do that. So I'll just work hard and I'll do it. And then sometimes having men get in the way of that and be like, no, you can't do that. You're a woman. My reaction is really like, why? Like, but why though? So I think we have a bit to go. I don't think that's just an Australian thing. I think that's all over the world. But yeah, I think there's a lot of work to go. And I hope that with dance and the dancing that I can do, I hope it shows. And I think doing things like this is really good because, I hope it shows that, yes, we're dancers and we're wearing glamorous costumes, but we're also doctors and teachers and lawyers and mums and wives and children ourselves that, well, I don't see why women can't have it all. I'm lucky that I've got some really good role models who have demonstrated that to me. So that's my mindset. I think, there's some people who maybe need to catch up a bit.
And that's fantastic. As a father of two young girls, that's something I always think of. You touched on it briefly, but who are your inspirations? Who are your role models? You've got different facets of life, but who are those role models for you?
Yeah. I mean, I think I've got lots, really. Like, I've got some that I really look up to in terms of dance. There's some amazing Brazilian dancers that I really admire and have been lucky enough to do some classes with in Brazil. My sister, I think, has always been a big role model to me. She's a few years older. She's just always been really smart, really beautiful, just a go-getter. And I think, again, because of the way our parents raised us and the way, mum has raised us, we were taught, I guess, to value those things that, like, okay, well, if you want it, work hard and do it. A lot of my friends I really admire as well because, like I said, we're all kind of juggling a lot of things in life. We're juggling our careers and dance and, going to competitions or going across the world to Carnival to better ourselves as dancers and people. And, some of them are mums and trying to parent. And whatever. So I think honestly, I probably take the most inspiration from the women who are around me and who surround me. And it's dance, it's family, it's also the women at work as well. I'm lucky that I work with some really good people, so I take a lot of inspiration from them. And then as well as there's the dancers and the costume maker, like I guess more the celebrities, who are a little more out of reach, but I admire as well. But I think the ones that are most important to me are the people that I actually know.
Social media gets a bad rep for lots of things, but all of us end up on it.
Yeah.
Is there a role for women's empowerment? I know there's a move for body positivity that's getting better with social,
Yeah.
but is there a space for women's empowerment or just advocating for things that women value on social?
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. I think like social media is one of those things where it's always that double-edged sword of like can be used for good and it can be used for bad. So I think I I think it's also like you've got to train the algorithm too. Um, so I think, social media has probably learnt the things that I'm interested in, and so that's probably what I see most. Um, I think if you're not seeing that or you're seeing things that you feel are harmful, then I would just say it's not worth it. Like, just get rid of it. Um, I am conscious of not wanting to be part of the problem. So I try to, in my, stories, like Instagram stories and all the social media content I took while I was overseas, I try to show not just the glamorous bits, but I consciously try to show the like, okay, it's 5 a.m. and we've had 3 hours of sleep and we look terrible and we're both a little bit sick and we've got to go to the airport and I can't fit everything into my suitcase. I try to show those kind of behind the scenes, like often less glamorous things. And interestingly, they're the ones that people seem to like the most. You know, People will often message and be like, oh man, that's so funny. You guys locked yourself in your hotel room. Or, that's so cool that, you just hiked up that mountain and you guys look terrible, but it's really cool that you did it. So I think I try to kind of present things in a way that they're actually happening. Yeah. But again, it's a hard one. Social media is a hard one. I think you just need to take everything with a grain of salt and just realize that most things on there are not real. And I think I recently, actually just before I went on the trip, had an experience where my Instagram account got hacked, which was really eye-opening because I've never had anything like that happen before. But this person had, somehow managed to get in and change the email address to their email address. So I couldn't change the password, nothing. I was completely locked out of the account and they were the owner. And they started posting like about cryptocurrency, which everyone realized was not me. I don't know anything about cryptocurrency. So it didn't take people long to realize. And I ended up having to just get everyone to report my account as a fake account because it was the only way I could get Instagram to take it down. But it was a bit of an emotional roller coaster because at first there's the violation of, well, someone is pretending to be me and they could be sending any messages to anyone. They have access to all of my private conversations on Instagram, all of my photos, my videos, things that people have sent me. So that was really violating. I think the next thing was when I realized I can't get it back. I can't actually kick this person out and get it back. I actually just need to shut it down, which means that you lose everything on there. And then I was quite upset by that because there's so many memories and, it's not just the things you post yourself, but it's things that, stories that other people have tagged you in and you've shared, or, I had all of my stories from my first trip to Brazil, to Rio. So, it was a lot of memories for me that was sort of gone. But then it also made me be like, I shouldn't care so much about this. Like, it's social media. A lot of the footage I've still got, sure, it's not been snipped down to a 1-minute bite-sized piece. It's the full clip, but that's the thing that matters. Like, I haven't actually lost a lot of this stuff. Maybe some of it that people have shared with me, but hey, why can't I just message them and ask for it? So I think it also made me be a bit like, okay, we need to not care so much about this, because it can also just go, apparently. At any time it could just go. So I think now, it's made me be a little bit more like, it's fun. It can be helpful. It can be a helpful platform, but it can also be a not helpful platform. And I think it can be really addictive as well. So it's probably better to just keep it as like a fun little thing. Whatever you're posting, do it mindfully, post your achievements, things you're proud of, things that make you laugh. But I don't really agree with it being used as a platform, which a lot of people do, to like have arguments or fights, or, put out religious or political messages or negative opinions and views and stuff. So I think, yeah, it can totally be a platform for anything, really. But I think it's more like the user needs to be careful that you're actually getting the right messages, and almost like not putting too much into it, because at the end of the day, you don't ever really know who's on the other end.
And you don't own anything.
Yeah.
The platform owns it because you haven't paid anything for it.
Yeah. And that was like when I got, hacked, and you try and contact Meta, like they're like, I don't care. You can't even directly contact them. A lot of people were like, oh, have you tried to can you just email them? There's no email address. There's no phone number. It's really an at your own risk venture. So that was a big learning lesson for me, actually.
And you'll never learn unless you get hacked.
Yeah.
You'll never learn. And I learned this from a very dear friend of mine, that people go, oh, if you have a negative, nasty comment, you can report them. If somebody DM'd you with a life threat, you can't do anything about it, because it's a direct message to you.
Yeah.
So it is, I love the maturity that you have to say that you've got to use it with care.
Yeah.
I think more people need to have that level of maturity. As a physiotherapist, working with children and young people, sometimes with disability and assistive needs, how do you find the energy and the heart and the passion to do what you do?
It's fun, I think. It just helps because it's fun. I really do quite like my job. So, obviously work is still work, and some days, you're tired and you would rather be on a beach somewhere. But I think generally speaking, because of the clientele that I work with, primarily in disability, it's different to a relationship with someone who's, say, sprained their ankle, where you see them, you might help them with their rehab, you discharge them, and, maybe never see them again until they sprain their other ankle or something. A lot of these clientele have lifelong disabilities. And so some of them I've been working with for years. And so you really get to know them and know who they are as people, and establish, a bit of a connection with them. So I genuinely like to see them, I think. And I like to try and help them as much as I can. And see the confidence, that can grow in them from that. Even, some clients that I see might have degenerative conditions. So they might have conditions that will never get better. But I always try to tell myself, sometimes I do feel a bit sad about that and wish that their circumstances were different. But I try to tell myself that at least I know that they have a physio who actually cares. At least there's someone, I know for sure, someone on their medical team who genuinely cares about them. So I think like the dance balances things out. I think going to dance is where I sort of probably work through a lot of the day-to-day stress, and then it means I can show up the next day and try and give all of my clients the best of me that I can. And some of them I've even gotten into dance. So that's been really fun as well, because I've got a few clients now who, have agreed to trial some, kind of dance as part of their physiotherapy. And I now even have got some clients who perform around Canberra as well. So, for me, being able to celebrate those wins with them is really meaningful. And it keeps me passionate, I think, about what I do.
And you might show up to be the physiotherapist,
Mm-hmm.
but sometimes you might show up in situations that you see deeper underlying issues with the child or young person or the family setup or their environment.
Yeah.
How do you deal with situations like that?
Yeah, it's definitely tough at times when you see things like that. I try as much as I can, if families and people are open to being connected with other services, then, obviously I'd always try to encourage that. Sometimes people aren't open to that or just don't have the capacity for whatever reason to do that. And sometimes it is difficult, and sometimes it is frustrating if you feel like the system or just their luck has kind of let that person down. I think that's where, again, debriefing is really important. So, I have a supervisor. As part of being any kind of allied health professional, you need to have a clinical supervisor as well. So that's where touching base with the supervisor is good. And if there's other kind of members of the treating team, speech pathologist or occupational therapist or whoever, I think getting permission from, the client to liaise with these other people is often really helpful as well, because they might see things from other perspectives or different sides, or have knowledge, on things that I don't have knowledge about. Sometimes may not even be aware of the information. If you've been someone's physiotherapist for years and they've just gotten a new speech pathologist, they're much more likely to tell the person they've known for years about the problems they're having rather than the person they've just met. So, I always think being able to work in a team and work with the other disciplines gets the best outcomes. So I always try to encourage people being open to that kind of collaboration. It's never very nice if you feel like people are talking about you, though. So I think I'm just mindful of trying to do it in as transparent a way as possible is important. So I think, like you said, you show up for physiotherapy, but sometimes there's actually a lot of communication that needs to happen, because sometimes you can see, well, in order for us to succeed here, we're probably going to need some help with X, Y, Z. So if you can kind of help set things up in that way, then you usually see better outcomes for it.
In your time doing the work you're doing and doing the wonderful work you're doing, has there been a young person or a caregiver that has said something, complimented you, or that's stuck with you for a while?
Yeah, I think, some of the things that, like, especially if you're working with young people and kids, they're just funny. So sometimes they just say really funny things. And that sticks with me just because it's like one of the, you have those moments of like, God, I love my job, which doesn't happen all the time. Sometimes I don't love my job, but most of the time I do. I think it's probably often from the families. Um, I think when you can see how grateful the families are, or when they kind of report back to you saying, you might have been working something in physiotherapy, and we're always trying to work on things that will have a meaningful outcome. Um, it might be, a child who is really hypermobile and has low tone, and you might be trying to do all these core strength exercises, which is boring as hell and no one likes doing. But then you might have their mum say, oh man, because, this kid's core strength is so much better, like he sat down and tried to play the piano and it made him so happy, and they might not see the connection of what you're doing to that functional outcome until they see something like that. So I think whenever there's those little like light bulb moments, um, that that is always the thing that sticks with me, I think. Or milestones, like if you're working with, and I've worked with quite a few people who've gone from sort of teenagehood into young adulthood, and seeing them move through milestones, graduate school, start university, or start at a day program, or do something for the first time. I think those moments are the things that stick with me as well. And I think, in terms of, is there something that someone said that's really stuck with me? I think there's the mother of a client of mine said, well, she's always been really conscious of how I'm feeling. She's just a really beautiful woman. And she's always like, do you need a cup of tea? Do you need a drink? Do you need a snack? Like, I'm often, running around day to day, and she knows that. And she's always like trying to take care of me. And I was like, no, no, no. Like, I'm here to take care of your child. Don't worry about me. I'm fine. And then she sort of explained it to me one day, and she was like, yes, but you're healing. These were her words. I'm not healing anyone. She said, you're healing my child. And that's energy. That's like a bit of an exchange of energy. And so I need to make sure that you're cared for because you're caring for her. And like, it was just this idea of like, if we all just care for each other and we're all giving and we're all getting back, then we're kind of forming this like nice community. So in her mind, it's not just, like, oh yes, you're getting paid to give us a service. It was like, no, you're looking after her. And so I have the ability to look after you while you're looking after her. And then she brings me so much joy. And it's like this kind of cyclical, just caring circle. And I have thought about that. I have thought about that a lot because I think if you can help people to feel better, even your mood is better. If you feel better in your body, then your mood is better. You're probably more likely to be kind to people. And, if you do a kind deed for someone, then they're more likely to do a kind deed for someone else. And I really liked that sort of concept because sometimes you have days, especially if you're working with clients who have these lifelong disabilities or degenerative conditions where, sometimes you do feel a bit down and you feel like, well, I can't get them better. I want to, but the nature of their conditions means that, I can't just cure anyone. And you can feel down, but I think the idea of like, well, they're being cared for and you're being cared for, and in turn, I think that sometimes helps me get through the days where I feel, if someone's taken a backward step or something's not going as well as planned, or someone's had some kind of, negative medical incident and I'm feeling a bit stressed and worried, then I think, yeah, that is something that I go back to that helps me.
Allied health professionals and people who care for disabilities are amazing humans, and you do a lot to heal people. Maybe not in the scientific term of the word, but in so many other ways. I think sometimes you just need to know that somebody cares.
Yeah.
for the young person. Somebody cares for that parent or those parents. I think that's an amazing thing to hear and do, and for you to be there. How do you how do you deal with, sometimes when you see these children, see these parents, there is a level of disappointment in them that they can't do or perform a certain activity or action, or the parent might not be able to, run around and kick a football around. How do you deal with situations like that?
Yeah, it's tough. I mean, I'm not a parent, so I try not to give, I mean, obviously, as a general rule, not to give any advice outside my scope of practice. Um, but I'm certainly not a parent. So I don't I don't ever want to say, I think it's easy because it's uncomfortable to see someone feel disappointed or sad or angry or frustrated. It's an uncomfortable thing to sit in. So I think sometimes it's easy to be like, oh, but what about this or what about that? But I don't think that's actually helpful to do because they are dealing with just the reality of the situation that they're in. So I try to just be validating and usually just say, well, yeah, that must be really hard. I don't know because I'm not a parent and I don't have any disabled children, but I imagine that that would be really hard and you're doing a great job because they are, all of these families usually are doing a great job and they're all doing the best that they can do. And people have got different amounts of support around them as well. Um, so yeah, it's hard. It's probably the harder side of the job. Sometimes people do confide in you because they're someone that they might see fairly regularly. The families might see you regularly. Um, but I feel like it's not really my job to give advice or pass judgment because I don't know. I don't know. I can talk about, biomechanics and the body if you like, but I don't know how you should parent. Um, and I wouldn't want to like pretend that I have all the answers to that because I definitely don't. So I just try to just be nice, be kind, um, and just tell them it's okay to feel what they're feeling because, I think sometimes we can run away with like a bit of that toxic positivity stuff as well. Whereas, a lot of the people I know, the reality is it is really hard. So I don't think it's helpful to be like, oh, it'll be fine, or maybe they'll find a cure, or maybe this will change, or maybe a miracle will happen because it's not my place to say.
Most parents also don't know.
Yeah.
We also just do kindness and things that we think
Yeah, yeah.
are the best that we can do for our children. If you had no financial restrictions,
Mm-hmm.
what are one or two things you will change in the area of disability education and support?
Oh, I think, honestly, I think multidisciplinary teams just get the best outcomes. I think the way things are kind of set up is professions and doctors, I see this in the medical system as well, tend to be very siloed to their one area. And sometimes I think it can almost be up to the patient or their family to be communicating that information between people. And I think there are, processes in place, things like that are starting to get a little bit better. But I think if I could, yeah, I would kind of sort of just be like, well, everyone needs to have a team and they all need to be talking to each other. Everyone needs to be working together. Um, unlimited resources, unlimited funding, whatever they need. But I think having, each sort of patient have access to a team that is actually working together or with their kind of goals and best interests, I think that would be like the ideal outcome.
Alex, there's so many wonderful things I can say about you in terms of being confident, being professional, being committed, being all of those beautiful things that you are, what makes you happy?
Yeah, I think I'm always busy, that's for sure. And I think I know sometimes I'm like, oh man, I need to slow down, but I love doing the things that I do. Um, that's probably half my issue is that I like doing so many things. So I love dancing. It gives me so much joy. Um, I am quite close to my family and I like spending time with them on the weekends. I am passionate about my work and so I do want to excel in that and progress in that as much as I can. I love to travel and see the world. I think it's important, that if we have the means to do that, that we do because we learn so much from it. Um, and I think experiencing different places and cultures makes us better people. So I think like I'm lucky in that the things that are currently in my life are the things that make me happy. Um, I definitely was conscious of not wanting to talk to you today and make it seem like, oh, she has a great job and she dances and she does this and she's that and she's got it all worked out because I totally do not. And I really need to work on time management and balance because like I don't have that. But again, it's because I love doing all these things. So I think, yeah, I think that makes me doing all those things makes me happy. And then, coming home, seeing family, watching a movie with my dog, like sometimes just the simple things, a nice hike outside. I think sometimes those things.
As massive Mount Taylor.
Oh, massive Mount Taylor. Yeah. Yeah.
And because you're human, and only because you're human, when you're sad, when you're down, although you have a good support structure and that strong frame of family, how do you pick yourself up?
Yeah, sometimes I think you just need to have a cry. I think you just need to have a cry, hug an animal. For me, it's my dog. Um, or a child. I feel like kids are good like that too. Sometimes I force my nieces to hug me, even though they just want to go play. Um,
My kind of therapy. It's my kind for children.
yeah, yeah. Um, I think that, yeah, that kind of gets me through and then just like kind of refocusing. I think because I am busy, I don't probably have a lot of time to wallow necessarily. Sometimes that's probably good. Sometimes it's probably bad because sometimes I probably need to take it a little easier. But um, I think I'm often like looking to the next thing, and thankfully, there's always something good. There's always something to work towards, something to look forward to. So yeah, I think you just got to like. Sometimes if you're sad, just be sad for a minute. Be sad. It won't last. You'll feel happy soon.
Good advice.
Yeah.
From your travel,
Mm-hmm.
what's the one place or journey that's really memorable for you or created some impact on your life?
Oh man. I mean, obviously Brazil has been really impactful. Impactful enough that I went back the next year. I think because I learned so much and experienced so much, and that culture, which is not my culture, is so ingrained with something that I love very much. So I think, I think, that was a really impactful trip. Um, I think when I was maybe 18 or 19, I did a trip to Patagonia and did some hiking. And I think that was really impactful too, because that I think is when I learnt, that being in the mountains and being in nature, I think is really a positive thing for me too. I think getting out of that crazy busy life and just spending some time in nature does wonders for you. So I always think back at that trip because I think it taught me a lot, just about what I need as a human to do well. And it is sometimes just stepping outside, going for a walk, looking at the landscape. But I'm lucky that I've traveled a lot. My dad was a pilot, so we were very fortunate that we got to do a lot of travel growing up. So yeah, I've done some great trips. And then the more I see of the world, the more places I want to go. So it's like never ending. Just, yeah, throwing all my money away on travel.
But it's also good experiences and learning. How do you define success?
Oh, I think if you're happy and content with your day-to-day life, I think that's success. I reckon.
It's a great answer.
Yeah.
If someone wants to connect with you and ask you questions about dancing or how you do the amazing things you do, where does somebody find you?
Yeah, you could go onto my Instagram. It's private, but if you send me a request or a message, I'll always read it. It's at the real Queen Alexandra. My old account that got hacked was Queen Alexandra. But now it's gone. So I was brainstorming with the girls, what do I call my new account? So we've called it The Real Queen Alexandra because this one's actually me, the other one not me anymore. So yeah, you could just shoot me a message on that.
Queen Alexandra, it's been fantastic talking to you.
Thank
you so much for your time. Thank you for sharing your insights.
Of course. Thank you.
Thank you. A massive thank you to Crown Plaza Canberra for hosting this episode of the podcast. If you are looking for really nice accommodation in close proximity to Canberra CBD, or if you want well-appointed meeting spaces, check out Crown Plaza Canberra. Thank you again.